I was in an engine room. I went from being 100 feet in the air and aloft to being in the depths of an engine room that up to my shoulders in bilge water, trying to rebuild pumps. And there was something about that experience at sea and surviving and triumphing and getting that, I don't know, that crucible moment, I like to call it, where it's like you are formed into a better and like more powerful version of yourself that it really still sticks out to me.
Ahoy, shipmates. Welcome back to On the Wind. I'm your host, Andy Schell.
And Mia Karlsson
is here again. We're sitting at my dad's kitchen table in Pennsylvania, but we're flying back to Sweden tonight. Mia, I was joking with you a minute ago that it's like in 24 hours we're going to be home in our house, and yet it somehow feels like those are going to be some very long 24 hours.
Yeah, but also if you put it in perspective, it took us almost 18 days to cross Atlantic from the Canaries to Caribbean. So it's almost like a time machine when you're flying.
It 100% is like a time machine, but flying with a 3-year-old, you get less of the time machine effect, I think.
That's true.
Those hours just stretch and stretch and stretch. Are you excited to go home?
Yes, I am. It's always nice to come home.
What are you most excited about?
I'm excited to be in our own house, have our own things, and just be in one space for a little bit. And just be home.
I'm excited for the colder weather and to make fires.
That is true.
Both in the container and in the house. And we're not going to be home long. You and I are going to Portugal to do our first trip together since Axel was born. We've talked about this a bunch, but now that it's like a week away, how do you feel?
I feel really good about it. I just hope Axel is going to have a quick and long enough transition because we're just going to be coming home from the US. But I think we'll be fine. He loves being at his grandparents' house. So.
Yeah, he'll be fine.
And I'm really excited to be sailing again together with you.
Yeah, it's going to be weird because we've learned a lot with other people. Like you and I, we're going to have to reestablish our routine together, I think.
I think it will come very natural.
Yeah, I guess so. What have we got upcoming with bunks on the boats? You're in charge of that. How is the crew shaking out for next year?
So we have had quite a bit of signups. I think after the boat show, we had a lot of people coming up to the booth, and I think a lot of people like to see us before they sign up, and we had a bunch of signups coming in from that. But we have a few openings in the beginning of the year, and a couple of bunks here and there over the winter, and then some in the summertime. But I don't have it on top of my head, so it's best to just go into 59-north.com/2024 to see the whole calendar.
But you're actually sailing the next 2 trips on Falcon. You're going to be on the boat.
Yeah,
and
which is exciting.
The one in January has space open still.
Yeah, I'm closing the year and I'm starting the year.
Yeah.
So if you want to come sailing with me, you know where to find me on the first trip of the year.
That's Portugal to Las Palmas.
Correct.
And the Canaries.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm also looking forward to some stability over the next little while, and we'll see you guys back here. I'm doing the next week is the last episode of this season of the podcast. I'm hosting that one. I'm not sure who's going to air yet. It'll be one of the episodes I did at Boat Show, and then we'll take a short break, and we'll be back with you in December. Until then,
hold fast.
Hi, everyone. Just a little bit of context before this week's On the Wind episode. So back in September, I was over in Washington again, and this time was there to go to the Wooden Boat Festival in Port Townsend, which, by the by, is an amazing weekend if you are interested in wooden boats or really just any gorgeous boats. You just spend 3 days walking around the docks, listening to amazing talks, learning about boat construction and hanging out with loads of other people that like all the same things. So really recommend heading out there. It's every year in September. Anyway, when I was there, I took the opportunity to spend an hour with Jake Beattie, who I know from Race to Alaska. He runs the Race to Alaska and invented the Race to Alaska with his friends. And he also is the executive director of the Northwest Maritime Center, which is the organization that organizes the race and also runs the Port Townsend Wooden Boat Festival. And they do loads of amazing things out in that area of the world for the maritime community. So I was really interested in hearing about that. And also, you know, the backstory behind Race to Alaska, what it took for Jake and his friends to take such a ludicrous idea and make it into an actual race that still runs, 7-8 years since its conception. I'm also interested in, what he thought was so special about the Race to Alaska, because there is something magical. And I wanted his perspective. it was a really enjoyable chat. We kind of meandered around various pretty deep and spiritual topics, and I hope you enjoy listening. On the Wind is also sponsored by the podcast's old-time friends, Forbes Horton Yachts. Andy Meir and I actually just had lunch with Forbes and his wife in Annapolis. And after the craziness of the boat show, it was so nice just to spend time with people who have exactly the same ethos and mindset around sailing and boats, and honestly, life in general. You know, for me, selling or buying a boat would be such a huge life event, and I'd want someone to help me along that journey that I trust. Someone who I can have a proper down-to-earth conversation with, and Forbes for sure would fit that bill and some more. Not every broker would be someone you'd also want to invite over for dinner. So it's also worth mentioning that Forbes can be a broker for any boat you have your eyes on. It doesn't have to be listed. He can then act as a middleman for you, and that's whether you're buying or selling, and take away any of those money conversations out of your hands, and he'll just take a small commission for that. So check out ForbesYachts.com. That's FORBES yachts.com if this is interesting to you, and wish you the best of luck with selling or buying your future dream boat. Thanks again to Forbes Horton Yachts for sponsoring this episode of the podcast. On the Wind is supported this season by AG1, a daily foundational nutritional supplement that supports whole body health. For any of you who are following closely, I am chuffed to share that yes, I finished my half Ironman in one piece. AG1 was a big part of my nutrition plan, particularly in the week leading up to the event, where I was focused on boosting my immunity and staying healthy. AG1 was a super convenient and reassuring solution for this. I threw in one scoop into a glass each morning, gave it a stir, and just for $3 a day, I checked so many nutritional boxes, freeing up my attention to resting and prepping for race day. So if a comprehensive solution is what you need from your daily supplement routine, then try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase. Go to drinkag1.com/on the wind. That's drinkag1.com/on the wind, and enjoy. Welcome back to another episode of On the Wind. I'm your host, Nikki Henderson. In Jake Beattie's words, the race to Alaska celebrates and illuminates life's everyday heroes. Jake is one of those people. Aside from creating and organising the race to Alaska, he is also the executive director of the Northwest Maritime Center, a not-for-profit organisation whose mission is to connect people to experiences of the sea. Through educational programs in boat construction, a wooden boat festival, the magazine 48 North, and now even a maritime academy, Jake and the centre are setting a world-class example of how to translate life at sea to everyday people. Hi, Jake.
Hello, Nikki.
How are you today?
I'm getting over a cold, but other than that, I'm fantastic. Fantastic to be with you.
And can you describe where we are?
We're currently at the Northwest Maritime Center in the midst of the Port Townsend Wooden Boat Festival.
And we're in, looks like your office?
We are definitely in my office. Yep.
And what's a day like usually in your office?
I have a boring job mostly. Like, we do really cool things, but my job is just talking to people and dealing with money. And then thinking of cool things to do. So
people who are listening probably don't know who you are, or maybe they do.
I don't know.
How would you introduce yourself?
It depends on the audience, but my day job is I run the Northwest Maritime Center, which is a nonprofit of maritime education and tomfoolery up here in the Pacific Northwest of America. I'm also the creator of the Race to Alaska.
Okay, and the Northwest Maritime Center I actually had to Google with Ev, my skipper on R2AK, because we're sitting there and we've done the race a bunch of times, and he lives in the Pacific Northwest, and we were like, what does the Northwest Maritime Center actually do?
We do a lot of stuff. In the broadest sense, we're an education and engagement organization that in so many ways tries to get people connected to having a relationship with the water, the salt water specifically. So we do events like the Wooden Boat Festival and the Race to Alaska, and we do classes for adults and youth. We work with schools and school systems to embed maritime learning into regular classroom learning, including we're helping start a standalone maritime high school in the Seattle area. So we also own a hotel that people can stay when they come for classes, and we publish 48 North magazine, which is kind of the sailing magazine of record in the Pacific Northwest.
That's a long list.
It's a long list.
That's not a quick one-liner in the elevator.
No, it's horrible. We need a long elevator ride. Slow elevators around here.
So why are you involved? What brought you to that?
My background is I grew up, as a sailing kid. Went to high school. Kind of went away from racing and sailing because I turned into an absolute asshole when I race, and I just didn't like that about myself. And then after college, kind of ran away to sea. So I sailed on tall ships. I taught for outward bound on the water, drove some tugboats and freighters, and then realized that that's the stuff I'm good at. But what the world needed was people who could translate that and get more people involved. So I've been doing kind of nonprofit maritime stuff for 20 years.
So the outward bound stuff, I mean, was that kind of like the seed for this? Like, at what point did you realize that you wanted to, I guess, like you must have had something in your head that was like, it's going to make me happier to give back to this rather than to take.
Mostly I kept working for really great places where, whether I was on tall ships on the East Coast or working for Outward Bound out here, the experiences were fantastic. And watching people's light bulbs turn on, we have a phrase around here, like the sea is the most powerful teacher we know. And I've taught in a number of different mediums in outdoor education, but like, the sea truly is like it's such an alien and powerful place. Like when you get people into it and confronting and growing from their own perceived limitations, it's I don't think there's anything better. I moved off the boats because all of these great programs I worked at, like the organizations just tanked after a while, and I was like tired of working for places that just closed because of bad management. And I felt like I might be able the person who could be a translator for the people who knew how to do this stuff to the people who needed to believe in it, who didn't do the stuff.
So did you experience that yourself? I can really relate to that kind of like as you said, that light bulb moment is just the best to be able to witness that in someone else. Like, did you first of all experience that on a personal level? Yeah.
In a number of small ways, but like certainly I was on, after college, I sailed I joined a tall ship called the Bounty. It was a replica of the Bounty on the East Coast. And it was like a ragtag, barely floating boat that we almost sank off of Hatteras. It sank probably 15 years later off of Hatteras, same spot. It actually did sink. It was a big tragedy. People died. But we almost sank. And there was like a 36-hour period where I was in an engine room. I went from, being 100 feet in the air and, aloft to being in the depths of an engine room that, up to my shoulders in bilge water, trying to rebuild pumps. And there was something about that experience at sea and surviving and triumphing and, getting that, that crucible moment, I like to call it, where it's like you are formed into a better and like more powerful version of yourself that, it really still sticks out to me, like where it's something that, it's a source of, power, growth, something that I can still draw from today.
Yeah. And like, was it just on a personal level? Like, oh, you had to fix it. You kind of felt in the middle of your own survival. You were in kind of, dictating your own fate, or was it more about the team effort of everyone working together to fix it, or something else?
It was a little bit of both. I mean, I think in those, there was probably 20 of us on board, and I witnessed sort of, if you've ever been in a crisis at sea, you kind of witness that spectrum of reaction where some people rise to the challenge, some people just flake out, some people freeze, and those who can come together, and like the powerfulness of coming together and not freezing with it. Yeah, that was incredible as well.
Yeah, it's like a massive, it's like a mirror. Going to sea is like a mirror, and those experiences are like a mirror on steroids.
And it's a mirror, but like sometimes you can twist the mirror a little bit, like with the right mentorship, encouragement, whatever it is. Like you can build your mirror. Yeah.
Did you have your own mentor that was helping you?
That's a good question. I was working at an outward bound school up in this part of the world, and we had this community of instructors that we really mentored each other. So we were teaching on 26-foot open boats, with oars and sails, replicas of 18th century. One of them was a replica of the Bounty's launch. And we had like total of 13 people on board. Everyone's sleeping on board. Some people sleeping under the oars, some people sleeping on the oars. Like we used to say, like, if you want privacy, close your eyes. But this community of instructors, we just kept pushing each other. We would, and really when I think about Race to Alaska, where did it come from? It kind of came from this culture of self-reliance, this culture of being in, like when you row a longboat, you're doing 2 knots. The currents around here in this part of the world, even if you don't get the massive Seymour Narrows currents, like they're 6-7 knots sometimes. So you operate completely in harmony, or you don't operate, like you go backwards. But we do the tricky, like we kept pushing each other to do more and do it simpler. Like this one guy I worked with, like he wouldn't bring a sleeping bag. He would just bring wool blankets because he was trying to be tougher, or like, I mean, it was, or we do.
Did that make him tougher?
I don't know. We all were impressed. I was like, that's not my trip, but good job, sir. Yeah, but people like going under railroad bridges by like striking sail and setting it so that they wouldn't lose their sail, but they would drop their masts as they went under the railroad bridge. And it was amazing. Like the stuff that people would do just to push each other in sort of their craft of these weird little boats. It was an interesting thing in my career where I just kept finding smaller boats and simpler boats, because the simpler the boat, like the closer relationship you could have with the experience, the less that was in the way. The technical stuff would get in the way sometimes, it felt to me. And it was really like driving to that relationship with place and water and, sort of the natural environment that's kind of the culture that came out of that.
So is what's driving you in all of these experiences, and maybe still now, is it the human thing? Is it the human side? Is it the fascination in seeing, how far people will go to sort of push themselves and learn about themselves and see, are they that fight, flight, or or they rise to the challenge? Or is it more about the connection with nature and self-sufficiency?
I think that's an answer that's probably changed over my life. It certainly started with the human part, as sort of like human against nature, human as different than nature. And I think probably, I don't know when it started, but certainly where I'm at now is closer to the last part, which is about understanding yourself as part of this greater system, and less about an idea of conquering nature, but of sublimating into it almost.
Do you think when you started the Race to Alaska until now, do you think that's also changed?
I think my understanding of it has. I'm not sure it has. I think I've uncovered myself to myself over this period of time, but it's always been there. I mean, this part of the world, and only because I've lived here, but it's the natural forces here. Every time I'm in them, it always feels like I'm going to church or something. Like it's just a holy place for me.
Yeah, that sort of spiritual element.
Yeah.
Like I want to sink into that more. Like, so you on a personal level, do you feel like you have that spiritual connection? Because you're really like, we're sitting in your office now. I mean, it's a beautiful office.
Thank you.
But and you've got the view of the mountains and the water outside. And,
like all offices.
And it's actually a strange, what's that fur behind you?
Oh, yeah. I have beaver pelts in my office. There's a story there, and I'm not sure if we want to get into it now.
We'll do a side tangent.
Okay.
Tell us about the beaver pelts.
First Race to Alaska, I was doing everything I could do to promote it, because it was just this weird idea that I thought no one would care about. And so I was trying to do anything I could, because we also didn't have a budget for advertising or anything. So I did weird things to promote it, including like start fights on the internet between trolls, arguing about what boat was the right boat and if it was a dumb idea or not. I I kept doing like I would just go to interviews. Like I had some interviews with some Alaska paper, and I talked about the race to Alaska, and then I left saying like, well, I don't know if people in Alaska are scared or what, but so far no one from Alaska has signed up. Maybe you're scared. Just like, I dare you to sign up, Alaska. And then like the next week, some guy from like the middle of nowhere, Alaska contacted me, and he said he wants to do the race. This guy's name was Alan. But he was going to be he was like a fisherman and kind of a subsistence hunter guy. And he wasn't going to have the entry fee. And he asked me if I'd be open to trading pelts for it, which I thought that was like Alaska slang for negotiate. And then like 3 weeks later, a box of 3 beaver pelts show up. I was like, well, I don't know what they're worth, but yes, you can be in the race to Alaska.
Take note, anyone who doesn't have enough money.
Yeah, well, just like if you're willing to kill an animal and like skin it and send me in a box, like that's commitment.
I feel like we're moving around back into you in the engine room. You're like, if someone else is willing to go to this lengths to stop a boat from sinking or sail to Alaska, then it's okay. I like them.
Yeah. Also, like I've gotten to tell that story for like 8 years. Worth it.
Has anyone tried anything better than that?
No. And so postscript on that story, the guy he was like a week before the race to Alaska, the first one, he like punctured his eye while like clearing brush. So he was down here like camping in the bushes with an eye patch on. He didn't make it to Victoria even. Ended up working on a farm in like the next town over in order to like get enough money to get back home. And then he had the first race to Alaska tattoo. We didn't actually give them out at that point, but he got one, sent me a picture, and then sent me a box with no return address. I'm assuming it was him, but it was a box from his part of Alaska with 6 mason jars, 2 of the best smoked salmon I've ever had, 2 of the worst moonshine I've ever drank, and 2 were filled with coffee. And I was like, that's weird. And he'd sent me like some homegrown weed as just like a thank you for the coolest guy ever. I love this guy.
I mean, he has a good imagination.
Yeah. Yeah.
You have this drive to kind of understand, it sounds like a kind of an interconnection between humans and nature and how we're all part of the same, as you say, not conquering nature, but working with it.
Yeah.
Is running the race, like, is that feeding that for you?
That's a good question. No. I mean, I think on a personal level, I think what it feeds is there's satisfaction in seeing the joy in other people experiencing things, and whether they're in the race or the sort of legion of race fans who are drawn to get a little bit closer to the experiences. But, we're zooming around in power boats and airplanes and flying drones and, we're not doing the thing. We're facilitating the thing, which has a different kind of joy to it.
Yeah. So what do you do to find that then?
I go engineless sailing as much as possible on the simplest boat I possibly can. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like it's a good question because a lot of people who work in this world, I mean, you're working in an office, but even people who sail for a living, but you're always facilitating someone else's experience. Yeah. And it's like, how do you get your own kicks? Because there is something beautiful about providing an opportunity for other people. And as you say, seeing their light bulb switch on.
Yeah.
But there's also something about returning to like that person who stopped the boat sinking and returning to that.
Yeah.
Finding out about yourself and fulfilling, filling up that pot. How do you see that going forward? How do you continue to do that? Well,
we have this like the closest version of an outward bound boat that you could possibly get to. We have a 35-foot flat bottom Sharpie. It's basically a big open boat that has 2 unstayed. There's unstayed masts. It draws like 6 inches with the centerboard up. It's a big surfboard, really, with a tiller. And it's just simple. There's like 6 moving parts, including the tiller. Like it's simplicity. But other than that, like my wife and I continue to do, and now with our daughter, we find similar experiences abroad too. Like last year, we, with a group of friends, found a place in the Bahamas where you could rent like a 22-foot Sea Pearl and all the camping gear. And we went beach camping through the Bahamas with like a little mini armada of these little like engineless day sailors. Or we bought a $600 Hobie Cat in Loretto, California, and like went camping through Baja on a Hobie. I'm interested, like I'm as much as we facilitate a lot of like big boat experiences and education, like it's not really where, like I have zero desire to be part of a cruising community. Like I just like camping on a beach is where I'm at.
Interesting. So what's keeping you in this job then?
We do a lot of cool stuff. And like, I think finding people, like I'm not didactic in that I don't think everyone can or should be on the water in the same way that I want to. I think whatever way I can facilitate a relationship to the water, and therefore, is that around here, it's really, human existence in the Pacific Northwest has been defined by relationship to the water for 13,000 years. And it feels to me like to fully be in and of this place, that's something that everyone should experience.
Yeah, I fully agree. And I think that comes across in your writing. You're interested in continuously investigating that connection, that spiritual connection between, I guess, I don't know whether it's self-sufficiency or nature and you and the way the Race to Alaska is run. I don't know. I guess I want to say thanks for that, because I think that nice. people really, really feel that. Like, are you trying to get people to look at it in a different type of way?
I think so. I think, part of the source code of the Race to Alaska was like, there's an absurdity. There's kind of it's an absurdity that has evolved in sailing to where it is now, where it just doesn't make any sense if you like, especially racing, right? Like, it's not a natural conclusion that if you hit a buoy, you should spin around twice. Like it sounds like an odd superstition, right? It's like you're like apologizing to the buoy god or something, but like, why? So we started by like, how much of that artifice can we just strip away to get people closer to the actual experience and the actual, like, this incredible coastline without getting the rules in the way. And because rules they're human and weird, right? Like, and there's some structure to try to create fairness, but it never actually creates fairness. It might create consistency, but the consistency is also false.
So there's like a simplification thing going on here where you're like, let's take all the stuff.
Yeah, who cares?
Yeah. And there's also this element of laughing at yourself.
Yes.
So R2AK or you as a person or the community, everyone's, it's just so different from kind of your traditional race. Is that intentional?
Very much so. There was, and a lot of this stuff, like, we did it because it made sense to us, and then afterwards we figured out why. And one of the things I think about Race to Alaska is that I'm from here. Daniel also from that same Outward Bound instructor pool. That's where Daniel, Race Boss Emeritus, and I met. Sort of the founders of this all come from the Pacific Northwest, and what's the land? In the generation of grunge, right? There's sort of this.
Are you into music as well?
Very much so. Yeah.
Favorite band?
I don't have any favorite band. I'm all over the place.
Okay.
I think at least in the U.S., boating, yachting culture is really like, it's not centered on the West Coast, right? It's centered mostly East Coast. And I think what's happened is sort of like it's just everywhere else is an echo of whatever was created out of New York Yacht Club or whatever, Newport, whatever that is. And there's always been some disconnect for me because it doesn't really feel like here. It doesn't really, and so there's a real regional expression that I think has come through the Race to Alaska. That's not specific to here, but it's a little underdog. It's a little dirtbag. It's a little like make fun of ourselves. And it doesn't translate on the East Coast. I've done some presentations in Newport and things, and people often look at me like I'm an alien.
I can actually imagine. I'm actually visualizing this,
yeah.
And I can't imagine it going down very well.
No, and the same way, like, so we're at the Wooden Boat Festival here in Port Townsend. Super fun, super informal, beautiful boats. I went to the one in Mystic. I felt like an alien in Mystic, just walking around like I didn't have the tweed or the khaki pants and like the tucked in polo shirt. Like it's so I think Race to Alaska the sense of humor, the sort of like taking the piss out of yourself. It's all it felt right to us that started it because we're all from here, and it felt like it's a unique expression, an authentic expression of at least who we are in this space, an unheard voice maybe.
So you're like, hey, this is who we are. This is like our gang of like grungy West Coast kids. And, but like, we want to open the door. We're not an exclusive gang. So you know, anyone who feels a sense of belonging can come and join in, kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, and honestly, we kind of just did it for ourselves and had no idea that anyone else would care. Like I honestly, Daniel and I laugh about this a lot. I remember telling him, like, I don't know, like, well, 10 people show up and we'll make like I'll make a pot of chili and we'll feed them and we'll start, you know, and no one will care, but we'll have fun the first, like, it'll be fun. It'll be a little stunt that no one cares about but us, but it'll be fun. And you can kind of, if you've ever watched the first video or like the first promo, it's like a bunch of rowboats on a starting line. And because we had no idea anyone was going to show up. We was like, maybe some rowboats will show up. But like, yeah, we had no idea.
So if that's how you started it and it was very low key and it was for yourself and now it's growing and growing, like, are you feeling like you're losing hold of it? Like, is it growing in a way that you'd like it to?
Oh, that's a good question. It's a little bit at a transition point, I think. You know, we really started as this band of friends. And last year, like, Daniel decided to go do something else. The guy, Zach, who did the documentary and all of our films for the first 6 years, decided to go do something else. So we had kind of a new cast of characters. I was still around. And, you know, there's also something where once you get a new cast of characters, you kind of, they need to have their own sort of creative expression on it. And so I'm sure it's going to evolve. Yeah.
And how would you like it to evolve?
I don't know. We always experiment, you know, with like, you know, we've experimented with different rule changes or different things, but I think I'm less certain about how I want it to evolve and more certain about, I'm an increasing certainty about how I want it to stay the same. Like, there's something about some absolute simplicity that's important. There's something about grittiness and accessibility that's important.
These just sound like your core values as a person.
Totally. There's two things that, and I'm still trying to understand about the race, but there's two things about the race that like are metaphorical examples of like what's right. And so like the fact that there's a $10,000 first prize and a set of steak knives as a second prize, there's some magic in that. And I don't know what it is. Like if we just had $10,000, it wouldn't matter. But the steak knives are what makes the 10th, like that matters. And then we have something called Rule 8, which also I think sums up the race to Alaska, which is like, if we have to consult a lawyer to decide whether or not you're disqualified, you're automatically disqualified. Just if we decide we need to figure out if you're disqualified or not.
That's kind of like the anti-rule thing. Do you think?
Totally. Yep.
When the race to Alaska starts, there's a lot of like touchy-feely words and media coming out about it, and you're obviously very spiritual as a person, and I'm sure it doesn't all come from
It's
you.
It's annoying. It's irritating how spiritual I am. Yeah.
No, I love it. I think that people, I mean, it resonates with people so much that they come down the dock, even just yesterday, and cry when they think about their experience following the race because it's so emotional to them.
Whoa.
I'm interested. Do you have formal writing training?
No. Actually, so the way the race to Alaska writing evolved is that, well, this is I've never admitted to actually write for the race to Alaska before. Like, it's kind of like, it's always been
Oh, is that a secret?
It's been a secret. Yeah. So assuming I do write for the race to Alaska, I'll admit, so I did write. So the first thing that was written about the race to Alaska is like we needed a website. And so like I sat down and wrote a website over a weekend. Which kind of became the template, and it just kind of like poured out.
And when it was pouring out, are you pouring out your own heart and soul and not really thinking much more of it?
Exactly. I was just like, this makes me laugh, which kind of became the standard for what got printed about Race to Alaska. And then no one was signing up and so the first people that signed up, we started these bios that were like, the people weren't that cool that were signing up. So we were just trying to make them sound cooler so other people would sign up. And so that's kind of how the tradition of the bio started. We're just like, let's take a shred of something that's true and try to make the people sound much cooler than they are.
Which isn't that what everyone wants in life?
I mean, yeah, let's make people here. And so that became like this other, like, oh, we stumbled into like, everyone's kind of a hero in their own way. Like the term everyday heroes kind of came up. It's like the people that did especially the first couple of races to Alaska were like, they're just the person down the block who also climbed Everest or also circumnavigated Antarctica on skis or something. Like it just, you wouldn't even know, but like, there's a lot of people in this world who just walk around on the street and you wouldn't know that they're these world-class adventurers or aspiring world-class adventurers. But like everyone's got something that is admirable and hero-worthy inside of them. And so we did that. And then when Olympians started signing up, we just started making fun of them because like, don't you have something better to do with your time than this stupid race?
But maybe they want someone to notice that there's actually something cool about them apart from being an Olympian.
That's true. Did we make fun of you? We should have made fun of you.
You were quite nice about me.
We should have made fun of you.
I know.
You're a rock star. We should have made fun of you.
Were you in the cool gang at school?
I don't, it's hard to answer. Like I wasn't like the popular kid. But I was that kid who did like everything. Like I was like student body president, played sports and wrote for the newspaper and had an after school job.
So maybe you were always the kind of person who saw like the hero in everyone.
Maybe. I also made fun of people a lot. Like I'm judgy.
Noted. Everyone who's listening, make sure you get a good team name.
It's right. Yeah. Yeah. I hate a bad team name.
What would you call your team if you entered?
Oh my God. I don't know. It would be something cringy, mildly offensive. Team mildly offensive. That could be it.
Jake, people listening to this are probably interested in Race to Alaska. So what should they be asking themselves if they're thinking about signing up or following or...
Race to Alaska is kind of two different things, I think. It's at least two different things. It's a race and it's not a race. Like there are definitely people like you who race and win, but like it feels like it's probably 4% of the people. It's like the Boston Marathon or something. Like, there's like one Nigerian who's going to win, right? But everyone else is just running it to run it and see how well they can do. And I think that's probably the right approach to Race to Alaska. I think there's falsely two other things about the race. There's the connection to the race course and sort of the experience of this incredible coast. And there's also this community that you become a part of. And you're probably better to speaking about it than I am, but I've witnessed it over the years where, last night was the Blazer party, which all the racers are invited to. And it's a little bit of a send up of yacht club culture that we have a volunteer who buys thrift store blazers over the year and then brings them. And then if you're a racer, you can come and then you're assigned a blazer. And if you get to keep as many sleeves as stages that you've completed. So if you make it to Victoria, you get to keep one sleeve. If you make it to Ketchikan, you get to keep both sleeves. But so there's people walking around with no sleeve, like little vests, and they're racers for multiple years. And it's an incredible community of people that I get to by proxy be a part of.
Is there on that note of community, is there anything that stands out in your memory of all the years you've done of like the power of the community, people helping each other out or connections that have been built? I
mean, there's so many all the time. My standard line is like of the 6-7 years we've done this now, like I think I've met 3 assholes, like just 3. So it's an amazing ratio, I think it was 2016. I think it was the second or third year of the race. There was a team of quadriplegics. There was 3 guys. It was Team Alula. And they were amazing guys. They were all like pro athletes. But they didn't have use of like, some of them didn't have any core strength. So when they row, they had to like brace one arm on like the backstay and the other. And they were like just bicepping their way, rowing at F27. They made it to Nanaimo and they were slow. They weren't trying to win. They were just trying to do something amazing. It was a year that we had just gotten about 9 teams in after like 5 or 6 days or something like that. Super windy year. And this team Alula had made it to Nanaimo. So maybe 120 miles of the course, something like this. and one of their crew members bailed. Like it was crew dynamics, and one of them just left. And so we're at the kind of the finish line party for all these 6 teams. And I get a text from Spike, is this guy's name. He's like, "Hey, we're out, but even though we're disqualified, we want to keep going. I'm going to cry about this. Is there anyone you could think of who would come and help?" And like within 15 minutes, like I just kind of shut the bar down. I read this text. Within 15 minutes, like we had more volunteers. One guy flew to Nanaimo, sailed it to Bella Bella. The other guy, he only had like 3 days to give, and the other guy flew to Bella Bella, and it was this amazing like outpouring of racer support. But then also like we live stream all the finishes. I think that year, I can't remember who won that year. Oh, it was the year Mad Dog raced. It was like the fastest race. It was the record setting. The live stream numbers for Alula finishing, like 3 times as many as the winner that happened. And like just an outpouring of like, and they're disqualified. It was the most celebrated thing I think that's ever happened in the Race to Alaska. And it was a disqualification that we just celebrated like hell. Disqualification because you can't add crew, right? You can always lose crew, but you can't add crew. Who cares? I mean, an incredible thing happened. Incredible people came together. And just the power of this community to do amazing things and be human.
Gosh, like, yeah, we're both tearing up, actually, I think. Why does that make us tear up? What is that? Is camaraderie? I don't know.
There's a selflessness to it, right? There's empathy, there's selflessness, there's just the strangers helping strangers because it's the right. There's something magic about it, and those people I know they're still in touch. That's just the bond of like sailing those 3 days together. It's incredible.
And the gift of time, I think, as well, is so meaningful. Like you can give, you could throw them money, or you could, send them a meal pack, but to actually use your own time in this world to spend helping someone else, as you say, that you barely even know.
Yeah.
That's remarkable.
Just for the sake that we're all in this together. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's what makes me come back to the race as well.
Mm.
And I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's, you don't get that necessarily in the New York Yacht Club in quite the same way.
Sure.
And that's nothing to do with the pink trousers.
You could probably speak to this better than I could. It's Race to Alaska is usual to me, but it's I think unusual to the world, any other world, in that it's a mixing pot of world-class sailors like yourself, backyard DIY enthusiast sailors, elite paddle athletes, rowers, kayakers, and it's not like it's multiple races. It's one race, and you're all hanging out in my backyard eating a lamb the day before it all starts. Like it's cultures mixing as well. I think it's kind of cool.
And a few cauliflowers, I would note, for the vegans.
Cauliflowers for vegans, true.
Yeah, well done. Because you do have steak knives. I was wondering if you were going to make a aubergine knife as well.
I mean, you can eat vegetables with steak knives. Every year, whoever finishes first, like they finish, they get the accolades in the press, and then invariably they're like, "Where's that scrappy little team that like it's where's the paddleboard people? Where are the people that are rowing with those monster blisters?" Like there's such mutual respect for the various skill sets, including the ones, I had a reporter once ask me, is it harder to win the Race to Alaska, or is it harder to be the person who finishes last? Like, what's harder? And there's something to that, the impossibility of that answer, that I think is in that mutual respect, because it's like rowing a slow, shitty boat to Ketchikan is really hard. Winning is really hard. There's a lot of really hard embodied inside the Race to Alaska.
Actually, entering is really hard too, right?
Quitting is really hard, right? Like, I think that's one of the hardest, most admirable things, like getting to your limit, knowing it, and like bowing out in front of like tens of thousands of online followers. Like that's hard.
Yeah, I mean, I think this interview has shown that the Race to Alaska is very little about the sailing and more about the human story, which sounds like also the Northwest Maritime Center is as well. And it's coming across in everything you guys do. And if anyone's connecting with this, I'm sure they know where to look. Where should they look? Should they enter? Should they? Is there any other way they can support what the Northwest
Give us money.
West Maritime Center is doing?
Yeah, just give us money. No, I mean, yes, but I mean, there's a lot of ways to get involved. You know, there's a lot of things that we do. Certainly following things like the Race to Alaska, attending things like the Wooden Boat Festival. I mean, attending the Race to Alaska is kind of fun too. We throw a big party at the beginning, big street party, and you come watch the racers leave. The start's at 5 a.m., which we do because it's annoying. And the light's really good for photography. So attending things, if you're in an area that we're at, you can volunteer. If you're not in an area where you're at, you can follow along. We're a nonprofit, so you can also donate money because it helps us do things like the Race to Alaska and others.
Yeah, I feel like on to add a personal note to that, if anyone is thinking about supporting and is thinking about giving money, if I was to think of an organization of whose values, like everything you have said today, if I had kids and I wanted them to get into the maritime world, I would want them to get in through a door which had that backdrop behind it. I think there's a very, very big difference between a place which celebrates the unsung heroes in the world than a place in which it's exclusive and you have to know someone to get in there or look a certain way. So yeah, that would be my encouragement.
I'm going to write that down. We're going to put that on grant applications. Nikki says.
Well, Jake, thanks very much for your time this morning. And
Thanks,
we're heading back out to the festival. I think we're actually giving a talk.
Fantastic.
Yeah, we'll see you there.
Thanks.
Bye. A huge thanks again to Forbes Horton Yachts for sponsoring this episode of the show. If you want to buy or sell your dream boat, go to ForbesYachts.com. That's FORBES, ForbesYachts.com. Thanks also to AG1 for sponsoring this episode of the podcast. To get your free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase, go to drinkag1.com/on the wind. That's drinkalphagolf1.com/on the wind.
On the Wind is the podcast about sailing, created by 59 North and hosted by me, Andy Schell, and also by Nikki Henderson, August Sandberg, Emma Garshagen, and occasionally Ben Doer. The show is mixed and produced in Frederick, Maryland by Lee Cumberland. Ads are read by us, the hosts, and occasionally by 59 North's bosun Adam Brown and podcast producer Lee Cumberland. Episode artwork and website show notes are done by Laura Parent in San Francisco. The intro theme music is composed and performed by former podcast guest, musician, and sailor Cameron Dale, while the outro music you're hearing now is, of course, by our friends in Bergen, the Stormweather Shanty Choir. We love hearing from our fans, so send your questions and comments to holdfast@59-north.com, and please do us a favor and review the show on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time, hold fast.
I made up me mind that I was inclined to go to sea no more. No more, no more, to go to sea no more. I made up me mind that I was inclined to go to sea no more. As I was walking down the street, I met sweet Angeline. She said, come home with me, me lad, and we'll have a cracking time. But when I awoke, it was no joke. I found I was all alone. My silver watch and my money too, and my whole bloody gear was gone. Was gone, was gone. My whole bloody gear was gone. 'cause when I awoke it was no joke, for my whole bloody gear was gone. As I was walking down the street, I met Big Rapper Brown. I asked him if he would take me in, and he looked at me with a frown. He said,
last time you was paid up with me, you took up no score. But I'll take your advance and I'll give you a chance to go to sea once more.
once more, to go to sea once more. I'll take your advance and I'll give you a chance to go to sea once more. Sometimes we're catching whales, me lads, but mostly we get none. With a 20-foot oar in every paw from 5 o'clock in the morn. And when daylight's gone and the night's coming on, we rest upon our oars. And oh boys, you wish that you was dead or snug with the girls ashore. Ashore, ashore, or snug with the girls ashore. Oh boys, you wish that you was dead or snug with the girls ashore. Come all you seafaring lads that listen to me song. When you go a big boating, boys, make sure you do not go wrong. You take my tip when you come off a trip, don't go with any whores. But get married instead and have all night in bed and go to sea no more. No more, no more, to go to sea no more. Get married instead and have all night in bed and go to sea no more. No more, no more, to go to sea no more. Get married instead and have all night in bed and go to sea no more.